Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. The idea of the comic book come to life. Man, have we talked about that on this show a bunch. Not just a little, but a whole bunch. A lot. It's one of the big topics that we cover here on the show. We are comic book fanboys here, kids, in case you haven't figured it out. If you never listened to the show, welcome. You're about to geek out with us. It's kind of our thing. It's what we do here. But again, the idea of comic books come to life. And I don't mean as literally as, Zack Snyder holds up the book of the Watchmen in one hand and shoots the Watchmen with the camera. I don't mean it has to be that literal. We do not have to go panel for panel. It's not required. You can interpret. It's okay. As long as you're true to the source material, the smart fans out there will be okay with it. The numbskulls, you don't need to worry about them anyway because they're doofuses. Or doofi, or I don't know what the plural is of doofus. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. I've debated that before, believe it or not. But again, the comic book come to life. We're going to talk today about a sequel to what Phil and I think, both agreed when we recorded the first Avengers was going to probably be known as this generation's Star Wars Episode 4. I stick to that. I think we're going to be looking back on that Avengers film years from now and saying, man, that film is great. I mean, I say it now, but I think for a generation, it's going to become like a pivotal moment for them with good reason. But today we're talking about Avengers Age of Ultron. This film catches flack for a lot of different reasons. And I don't know how you guys feel after the fact or felt about it when it was released. But man, we got some thoughts. And I'm here to put some critics to shame and to silence them once and for all. Well, maybe not forever, but at least for the time they'll listen to this, perhaps. Let's get into it. Avengers Age of Ultron is a 2015 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics superhero team, The Avengers, produced by Marvel Studios, distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. As we said, it is the sequel to 2012's Avengers. It is the 11th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is written and directed by Joss Whedon. We'll have thoughts on that. It's got an all-star cast. It is, of course, based on the Avengers, created by Stan Lee and the King Jack Kirby himself, produced by the all-knowing, all-wise Kevin Feige, without whom none of this would have happened, more than likely. Released in the United States, nationwide release May 1st, 2015. Running time 141 minutes. The budget is around $444 to $495 million. Are you kidding me? The box office. This is a good one. The box office is $1.4 billion. And that is, that is your lowdown for Avengers Age of Ultron. Phil, this is it. This is the last Avengers film that we had yet to cover here on the 6M. This will complete the entire run. So kids, if you listen to this in sequence, Avengers 1, this one, Infinity War and Endgame, it's going to sound a little effed up maybe. Mostly because I'm saying all this. I could have just left all this out. It would have been seamless. But anyway, this is the last one that we've got, and now the series is complete. How long had it been since you've seen this film? And what's your overall opinion on Age of Ultron?
Age of Ultron is one of those movies where every time I see it on TV, like every now and then it'll be on like FX or something, and I'll stop and watch it. And it's always one of those movies where I'm just like, oh yeah, this was great. Why do people not like it? Um, I don't know. I probably, if I had to guess, because of the amount of time it's on like network TV, I've probably seen it more than the original Avengers movie.
Mm.
And that's not to say that it's better, of course, but just the amount of times I've sat and watched it because it's just on TV. I'm sure I've seen it more.
That's fair. It got good reviews, like critical reviews. Um, as of right now, it's got an overall approval rating of 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 379 reviews total. Uh, critical reviews are good. The Hollywood Reporter, Rolling Stone magazine. You know, I mean, there's some good reviews here. I think mostly it was the fans who had something to say about it.
Yeah,
Imagine that, Phil.
I
Fans
think it.
upset.
I I think it's aged very well, honestly. I think there
Mm.
are a number of things that from it, like the further we've gotten into the MCU, um, there are certain characters from this movie that I feel like people did not care about, and they care a whole lot more about now. And Age of Ultron really was the foundation to build up some of these guys like Vision or Quicksilver or Wanda. I mean, even Ultron. I think that there's more of an appreciation for Ultron after the What If episodes.
Mm. Well done. Yeah, well said. I totally agree with that. You know, I'm looking at pics right now of the cast, like from San Diego Comic Con when they were all together during those years of when they were doing the Infinity series and telling these stories. Dude, this cast, we're going to get into it, but I'm looking here. There's like a 10 or 11, 12 people on stage. I mean, this is nuts, dude. Are we ever going to get this sort of all encompassing, huge story to tell, well known actors for the most part, like traveling together, being friendly, being tight? Are we ever going to see this again, you think?
I think we can. I think that this franchise proved that it's possible. So I think we can. I just remembered when you said that. I remember the after the Comic Con when they put out those connecting posters with the characters on it, and it
Hmm.
had all of them sifting through like basically this sea of Ultron drones. And every time they put out a new poster, it'd be a different character in the midst of fighting a bunch of them, and it had like Vision off in the distance. It's cool.
That's cool. Yeah. Something to be said for the press that went into this and for the graphic design, for the ads, for the promotion. All the money spent was money well spent. Just the closing and opening titles of the Avengers films deserve a shout out because, man, the closing titles of this movie are pretty cool too, with the sculptures and whatnot. Really, really solid.
I was a big fan of the closing credits of the first Avengers movie, where it has like it shows like each character's like weapon, like it has the shield and it has like the music going over it. Just classic. Every time I see it, I sit and watch the entire closing credits.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the MCU has kept fans in the audience to the very, very end when the screen goes pitch black, more than
Yeah.
any other franchise in history, I would say.
I would say the Avengers also have one of the best modern themes of any superhero movie. Um,
Yes.
it's so good. Um, and I it didn't really come across to me how good it was until we got the trailer for Endgame. And no, it was a trailer for Infinity War when they had went the entire trailer without playing it, and then when they all come running down that field and they're playing it, I was like, so good, man. It's such a great theme song.
Mm. It is. My kid, they played it in the band recital. I think it was last year. And he told me that it was part of their concert. And I'm such a fanboy. When they get to that part, I just wanted to jump up. I was so excited. I've never heard it played live before, like an orchestra setting. It was very cool. So yeah, I'm with you. It's great. I mean, honestly, I think it. And look, this is going to be high praise, but I think it sits right up there with some of John Williams' stuff. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Really well done. So this is a big movie. We got a lot to tackle here. If you've listened to any of the other Avengers episodes here, if you've listened to the MCU stuff on here, and you had to have kids because there's a whole bunch of it, then you already know who's in this movie. But we're going to run them down anyway. Uh, we'll start with the big two. Robert Downey Jr., of course, as Tony Stark slash Iron Man, and Chris Evans as Steve Rogers slash Captain America. Phil, why, in your opinion, oh man, this question is forming as I ask it, I think. Why, in your opinion, are Cap and the duality of Cap and Iron Man in terms of the comics? you've got the yin and yang of two different personalities leading this team. How in the world does that translate so well to the big screen? And in addition to that, how in the world did Downey and Evans nail this? And they nailed it every time, man.
I think a lot of people want to like Iron Man because he's the cool guy. He's got the cool cars. He's rich. He's pragmatic in a lot of ways that people want to see themselves as. And coming into this franchise, if you did not read comics, I think you wanted to only see Steve as like this uh, clean cut Boy Scout. And yeah, no, I think they did a great job of showing that Tony, when chips are down, would conform. And Steve would look around like, no, no, we cannot trust the government to do what's right.
Mhm.
And he would be the last one to think that you would think that if you didn't read comics. You would think that he's the guy that would just fall in line because he's a soldier, but he's not that guy. And that's what makes him special.
Because the character of Steve Rogers, it's a tired old cliche we've heard for years, Phil, is that soldiers are fighting for your right to have freedom of speech. This character actually lives that. You know what I mean? Like that's his whole ideology is the government doesn't have a right to tell any of us what to do, and neither do I. Just because I wear this flag doesn't mean I sit in judgment. Like I wear it out of service to the country and to my
Yeah.
fellow man, but I don't have the right to judge anybody here, which I think is
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this also with Age of Ultron, we now have those guys in those characters for more than two movies at that point. In the first Avengers movie, that was still the first movie with Chris Evans as Cap with another cast. That was only his second movie in the character,
Mm.
and I thought he did a great job in some of the interactions with Tony in that movie. But this time around, like they look so much more comfortable in their roles. They seem like they're more defined in what their stances are and what their character traits are. And I think that that makes it so good. Like, are you kidding me? That debate they're having where they're both chopping wood, man,
That's great.
such a great scene.
It is, and he rips that stump with his bare hands in half. That is so good. Like it just punctuates the scene. And of course, Tony has to say something smart when he gets called away, and he says, "Don't touch my pile." It's so good.
Yes. So good. One of my favorite Cap and Tony interactions is not from a movie. It's from a comic book. It's from the New Avengers comics when Hickman was doing it. It's like right at the start of all the encouraging stuff, and Tony was a member of the Illuminati because of course he would be.
Mm.
And the Illuminati was like this secret cabal of Avengers members, and it was like guys from like the Inhumans, X-Men, um, and all across the Marvel universe. These were the smartest guys in the Marvel universe, and they had like this secret cabal where they would have meetings to try to figure out how to fix things before everybody else found out about it. And so they found out about these incursions,
Mm.
and they decided that they would have to handle it. They'd have to just destroy the other planet before it collided with us, right? And so, of course,
Mm.
Tony was on the other side, and he brought Steve in and explained with Steve what they needed to do. And Steve, of course, was like, "This isn't right." And there's like a brief pause in it, and Tony just goes, "Why do you always do this? Why do you always have to do this?" It's just such a great, such a great scene.
That's yeah, because he's worked for the government plenty of times in the past where he smelled something funny. I mean, when he stopped being Captain America in the comics, like I remember that issue where he's standing in front of this council and he just turns in the suit. He just hands it to them. He's like, I'm not this is I didn't sign up for this essentially. And that was a huge moment in the books, dude.
Yeah, he's a guy that he is altruistic to a fault. And he's the kind of guy that he will make tough decisions and he will stand in his convictions. Like he'll be looking around like he's not the guy that chooses the lesser of two evils. He'll look around and go like, "No, these are both evil. We're not picking either of them."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's funny because all these movies connect together. There's the one scene in this movie where he talks about wanting to put a suit of armor around the world, And he says, if we do this, we'll lose. And Cap says, well, he says, we'll do that together. And something like that. And he says, we'll do that together too. And dude, that comes back to haunt him in Endgame, because remember when Tony arrives back on Earth, and he says, remember what I said? He said, I want to put a suit of armor around the world. He said, you said we'd lose together. And he's like, you weren't there. And I'm like, oh, that's so good.
That scene is so great because everything that they've debated about for 3 movies, there's a full circle moment for it in Endgame. Endgame is just so brilliant. The
Yeah.
the him having that argument with him and saying, "Hey, if we lose, we'll lose together." But they didn't lose together. They lost because they were broken up and they were splintered. And Tony at that point still didn't get the reason why he lost on Titan is because he didn't just go back to Earth and call Steve.
Right. Right. Well done. Yeah. He had he had a flip phone. And it wasn't a flip phone,
Yeah,
I think.
he was still upset with him because of Civil War. And he at that
Mm.
point, he still didn't see that the reason that they lost is because Civil War had splintered them and they were all emotionally compromised.
I mean, Endgame or Infinity War perhaps would have turned out very differently had they been working together the entire time, because you see that scene where Thanos has the weapon and he's like coming down on Cap, and Cap is pushing up and pushing his arm back. And Thanos gets this look like, what the, like he's shocked that this human man is pushing him up. He's that freaking strong.
Yeah, I love how the trailers for it made it seem like he had a chance and then he just got knocked out. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, again, if you go back to that line of him saying, "Hey, we'll win," You don't have to you don't have to be paranoid about this. We can do this together. And then they do win together. They have like the biggest the biggest team up, the biggest roll call in the history of Marvel Universe. And they won. They won together.
Mm.
And you also get the great scene of Steve proving that he was worthy by picking up the hammer, and that flies in the face of what Tony said in the first movie of saying nothing special about you. What's special about you came in a bottle.
Mm.
And it's the same with Steve telling him, like, you're not the guy that would make the sacrifice. You wouldn't fall on the grenade. And he's the guy that sacrificed everything to beat Thanos.
Yep. Yep. So much of these things pay off, dude. That's what I love about the MCU. They just go out of their way to connect the dots, and if you pay attention, they'll make you happy. They'll pay it off for you. I really like that. The other two of the Fab Four here, Chris Hemsworth as Thor and Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. A different dynamic. The dynamic we'd get between Thor and Hulk, I don't believe is fully realized till Thor Ragnarok. That's of course when we really get a full dose of like a buddy cop movie, or like a buddy traveling movie, however you want to label it. So we just get glimpses of it. So I don't know if there's a massive dynamic between these two at this point. But these two round out this foursome, Phil. If any one of these four actors had not been these four actors, it probably still would have been a successful franchise. Like, I look at Mark Ruffalo, who replaced Ed Norton, right? If this had been Ed Norton, it would have been fine. Ed Norton is a tremendous actor. Would it have been better? I don't know. Would it have been worse? Well, I don't know if it would have been worse. It's probably still would have been good. Great, maybe. But man, these four together just click. They just have so much chemistry. Like Downey and Ruffalo together on screen are two nerds, and it's like they just chew the scenery when they're having these conversations with each other. I mean, what about, Thor and Hulk here? How did you feel about their story arcs and their character arcs in this movie particularly?
I always felt like a lot of the Thor stuff was cut short. Like you could tell that some of the stuff with him and going off to figure out what the Infinity Stones were and all that other stuff. So you could tell some of that stuff got edited out because
Mm.
it didn't make as much sense as it could have. It was fine, um, but it always felt like something was missing. Um, And I just feel like they just ran out of screen time. You had to juggle so many different characters and so many things at the same time. But I thought Chris Hemsworth was great here. He didn't get as much to do. Um, the Hulk talking point, of course, is whether you do or don't like uh, the romance that they put into this movie with him and him and Nat. Um,
Mhm.
I'm on the fence with it. I didn't hate it, but I don't know if it really added that much to this movie.
Yeah, I don't bump into it that much until the scene at Hawkeye's place when he says he just got out of the shower and she says she could have joined him. I thought, are we that far? You know, have they, had relations? Like, what are we talking about here? That kind of felt weird to me, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like some of that stuff would have been fine if it was just like implied, but the whole him just trying to be like nervous about talking to her and then them having like these like awkward conversations. I, I don't know. Uh I was fine with some of the conversations they had at Clint's house, like him saying like, what is the future like with me? Like do the math and all that. All this stuff was fine. I know some people didn't like the Natasha stuff because um she got into not being able to have a baby. And I know some women didn't like that. Of course, I cannot speak for women and, speak on why that may or may not be a good um, character note. But I thought it added stuff to Natasha. Like I thought it added depth to her character. Her feeling like because a big part of her character is guilt and regret, and a big part of her
Mhm.
life was taken from her because she was a widow. And I think you see that in her solo movie that a lot of her story arc from joining the Avengers on was taking back her life and being able to have autonomy. And so I did think that that was kind of an important thing to add there, that she could not have kids and how she felt like that made her, feel less than because she could not do that. Now, of course,
Mhm.
no woman is, diminished because they cannot be a mother. But I get her feeling like, I didn't get to make that choice on my own.
This is the first. Is this the first glimpse of the Red Room that we've ever had? I think.
Yeah, and those scenes are very, very creepy. Uh
Yeah.
I very much enjoy all of the stuff that we get to see through the kind of like the I don't want to say nightmare because everybody's awake, but all of the hex stuff that they did with Wanda, with each member and what they saw and how creepy it was. Steve standing in that empty ballroom and stuff. All of that stuff was cool to me.
It was very cool. Yeah. Geez. And, we know now, right? But as comic book fans, we knew for years that Scarlet Witch is among the most powerful mutants of all time. She blinked the universe out of existence with two words. We got in a storyline that lasted like 6 months or whatever it was. It was crazy. Uh, but man, we really had dose of that here. Should be noted that this is Thor's first time not playing against Loki in a movie.
Hmm.
It's never happened before, so it was a little bit different. Had to find a way to keep the character fresh. Um, I don't hate the stuff between Natty and Hulk. I did bump into it a little bit here and there with a few throwaway lines that were just kind of fell out of place. I love the fact that she's suggesting they run away. He's so good because he's like basically paraphrasing. What am I gonna do here? What do you think's gonna happen? Where are we gonna go? Do you know who I am? Like, you know what I mean? Like not treating her like she's stupid, but just like, do you wake up? Do you not realize that this will never work? Like, where can I go? And then she hits him with the not being able to have a baby, and then she follows all that up with, now you still think you're the only monster on the team. And I thought, that's really good writing. That's really good. Like, because when she hits him with all that, as a viewer, I'm like, all right, well, game on, put them together. Because before she said anything, I'm like, yeah, dude, you can't. this can't be. You guys can't wear what? Everybody, you kidding me? It's the Hulk. But after she says all that, it puts a different spin on it. So I kind of see why they threw all that in there.
Yeah, and I mean, I very much get some women like maybe bumping into that line, like I don't want to, I don't like the phrasing of that to
Mm,
be called a monster because you can't have a kid. But I very much understood the meaning that they were trying to get across with it. Was
sure.
it a little bit clumsy? Yes. But I do get what they were trying to do. They did so many
Yeah.
subtle things with Natty in this movie. Um, I mean, like all of the glimpses we get more of like her relationship with Clint and why it means so much to her. Why, of course, like all of his kids would be just like so enamored with her, and like why she would have this closeness with them because she can't have kids of her own. Um, I thought all of that stuff was good.
By the way, don't want to leave her out. She's one of the originals, as the other four that we're talking about. Scarlett Johansson is Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, of course. A bang up job as always. I've never seen her do anything in any of these films that I wasn't a fan of. Honestly, I've been a fan of
Yeah,
everything she's done.
I was just gonna say I do wish she was given more to do sometimes, and I do wish her solo movie would have
Mm.
came earlier. I think it would have made sense if it happened right after Civil War. Um, but it is what it is. I do think that she she had to take on the brunt of a lot of unfair criticism sometimes, and I think that she had to deal with certain things that other cast members did not have to deal with.
I think I know where you're going with it. Go ahead.
I don't know if you remember that whole joke fiasco with Jeremy Renner when they did that interview, and like he ended up having to like apologize, and Chris Evans was sitting there like awkwardly laughing next to him, so he also had to apologize. It was all really weird.
That's where you're right. That's where things get weird is when they go on those press tours because I've heard interviewers ask these real cringe-worthy questions of her. Like they don't sit there and fawn over Chris Evans for how ripped he is, but then they have to say that Black Widow is beautiful, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Why can't you just say that she did a great job? Why are you? And like sometimes it was uncomfortable some of the things that were being said to her, and I'm like, man, she's like the only girl on this all boy team, and I know not for nothing she had to put up with a lot of nonsense during those years, man.
She did, and then also Scarlett Johansson has also put her foot in her mouth with some of these interviews. I think one of the funniest interviews I've seen her do was remember when they used to do those like Zoom call interviews during the pandemic, and they had one of those big group ones for Black Widow, and so you had all of the cast members on screen in like this Zoom, and so someone asked her who was one of the most principal influences on Black Widow, like as a director and influencer, and she names all these people, and then she goes Joss Whedon, and you can see the look on Florence Pugh's face, like, I don't know if you should be saying that, but all right, it was great.
Oh, that's good. There's a great moment on the ship also after the opening sequence, which by the way, I led this show off talking about a comic book come to life. There's that moment where everything is in slow motion and the screen very suddenly slows down to a crawl where they're all attacking from the left to the right in unison. It jumps right off a comic book page, man. Like
Yeah,
to me, that's how you do it. You don't need to again hold a book up, you know?
yeah, I love the opening sequence of this movie. I love the Avengers um invading that Hydra base. Like you said, that big sprawling
Mm.
shot of them all attacking at the same time is so cool. You get Nat jumping off of that bike and doing the jump, the drop kick, and then you see like Hulk like jumping into screen. I think Cap's like throwing the shield or something. It's so cool. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that Scarlett gets enough credit for the work that she did with this role because I do think that she got to do more in this movie. Um, juggling this romance thing with Hulk, I think all of the stuff like her talking him down at certain parts of the movie is still great. Um, then, like I said, all the subtle stuff that she does with Clint and his family, and um, just the way she interacts with everybody else
Hmm.
on the team as well. I really enjoyed her in this movie.
Yeah, she's great. I have no complaints at all. Like I said, I've not been a fan of anything she's done in the MCU. I think everything she's done has been tremendous. I don't think her movie gets enough credit. I don't think she gets enough credit for it, in my opinion. I thought that movie was top notch. So yeah, I'm a fan. There's a scene on the when they're on the ship, Quinjet coming back from that opening scene where she's trying to reassure Bruce that it's okay. We're a team. We're doing what we have to do. And then she calls to Thor for a report on the Hulk. And he says, the gates of hell are filled with the screams of his victims. And he's all like celebratory. And Bruce is like, oh, and he goes, well, but not the screams of the dead, of course. No, no, wounded screams. He's trying to backpedal, mainly whimpering, a great deal of complaining, and tales of sprained deltoids and gout. That's a great line.
It's so
Oh,
good.
sprained deltoids and gout.
Yeah, no, we get to see her do some cool things. We get to see her wield the shield twice in this movie, which I thought was a cool
That's
note.
right. See, I'm tired of having to pick up after you boys. Right? It's
Yeah,
good.
there's that in that scene, and then there's the scene in Sokovia where they're fighting the drones, where she also wields the shield for a second.
That's true. That by the way, that sound effect of every time vibranium is handled is effing great. It makes no
Yes.
sense. Metal would never have a sound, but like the fact that every time a piece of vibranium is picked up, I'm a nerd for that. I really enjoy that. Even though it's silly, I really enjoy it. It suggests that this thing has power.
Yeah. We get two like really cool tag team spots with him and him being Steve and Thor in this movie. And every time they're together in a fight scene, it's really cool.
Oh yeah, dude. It's Thor and Steve. Like when didn't they do the spot at the beginning where he takes Mjolnir and slams it onto the shield? I think.
Yeah, they did that to I think split that car in half.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they do like kind of like a fastball special later in the movie.
I mean, dude, this is a fully realized Avengers team, right? I mean, this is exactly what we got in the third act of the Avengers film when they finally stopped trying to kill each other and started getting along. I mean, this is what the Avengers team should be working together. Dude, it can be said. This is the last time we see them working together like this, really, until the very beginning of Civil War and then the end of Endgame, maybe.
Yeah, by the end of the movie, when they work together in Sokovia, it kind of is the last time we see them before they splinter off because Steve basically makes his smaller strike team by the end of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We also had to mention, of course, and I don't leave him to last for any other reason, if only because we're just going down the top guys here. No disrespect to him. But Clint Barton slash Hawkeye, I'm going to tell you right now, Phil, if there's a comic book fan listening to this who still doesn't appreciate Jeremy Renner, I got nothing to say to him. Jeremy Renner is just as much of an important part of this team as anybody else. I know that's a big thing to say, but he just brings so much to this because and the fact that he says in this movie, there's what does he say? There's robots out there, there's explosions, we're up in the air, and I have an arrow. I have a bow and arrow. Like he's very aware of who he is on this team, despite what fans may or may not think about him. I mean, should the nonsense about Hawkeye just stop at this point? If there's any left, should people just let it go and just realize he's an Avenger. He's part of this team. Just leave it alone.
Well, I thought they did a lot of I thought he did some heavy lifting in this movie because he was kind of along for the ride in the first movie, and he didn't get a chance to do that much until the very end because he
Hmm.
was on the other side. Um, and so this movie, they very much humanized him by showing that he had his family, um, and then they kind of show why he's a member of this team. There are parts of this movie where he's like second in command. I don't know if other people
He
picked
is.
up on that, but he is. He's like second in command at several points in this movie. I love stuff like him standing there while everybody else is getting hexed by Wanda, and he turns around and like hits her with that arrow. And it's like, nope, nope, not this time. Nope.
Yep.
He just has so many moments where he's so quick on the draw. Not, pun not intended. And he's just a straight shooter throughout this movie. I feel like his speech to Wanda is one of the highlights of this movie, in my opinion. Him basically going like, "Yeah, I know we've all lost something, man, but if you walk out that door, you're an Avenger, man. He was like, none of this makes sense. We're on a flying country right now, fighting a bunch of robots, and I have a bow and arrow. Like none of
Yeah.
this makes sense.
And that pays off later when they say, who's going to stay here to guard this? And Wanda says, I'll do it. It's my job. So good.
Yes, yes.
So
He
good.
was he was one of the few members on that team that tried to lend a hand to her and actually help her. And I feel like that
Mm.
is a ongoing thread throughout the rest of the MCU with Wanda that a lot of times people weren't taking the time to empathize with her and see what was going on with her. Um, and I think he was one of the few people on the team that was like, "Hey, I'm here. We're here. We're in this together."
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. He's fantastic. And not for nothing, Phil, we nearly lost the guy.
Yes, twice.
Twice, dude, did you keep up with that story? Like that is how he's still here is beyond surprising to me.
Oh, you mean in real life? I thought you meant in the movie.
Yes.
Oh no, in
No.
real life, yeah, that was horrible. I'm glad he's okay. Um, but yeah, I think the brilliant thing of Joss Whedon in this movie of using him as the red herring, because of course, if you've watched anything Joss Whedon related, he always kills a member of the cast. He always kills a member of the team, and I felt like going into this movie, Hawkeye was like the obvious pick for a lot of people, and I think
Mm.
he picked up on that, and he made him the red herring several times in this movie. Like people were just going like, Hawkeye's gonna die. He's got a family." Like when they showed his family in the movie, I was like, "Oh no, he's gonna die."
Mm.
And it just never happened. I thought that was one of the brilliant things that Josh did with this movie is that like laying the seeds several times. I mean, at the very beginning, having him almost die and having him be put in that machine. It just they laid the seeds for us several times, and I was like, oh man, Hawkeye is gonna die. And then when the moment happens and he doesn't die, it's just such a good twist. Um,
Mhm.
but I really feel like Clinton is the heart and soul of this movie.
I agree. Did you suspect when you first saw this they were going to go that route? Because there's a scene where he tells, I think he tells a nurse or whatever that he's not married. And then later on he's on the phone and Cap says, "Who are you talking to?" He says, "My girlfriend." We're like, "What's?" For a moment I thought, "Oh no, has someone gotten Hawkeye?" Did you know they were leading to they're going to go to this basically farmhouse where his family lives?
No, I never thought that the family stuff was gonna happen. That caught me completely off guard. I thought it was great.
Mm,
I thought it was great that he had this safe house with the family and that Nick Fury would do that for him and help him have a normal life and keep it off the grid, which we kind of get like a payoff of that in the new Secret Invasion show. Yeah, I thought that stuff was good. I thought all the stuff they did with Clint in this movie was really good.
I agree. Don Cheadle is back, kids. Rhodey is here. We don't get a lot of him here. This is not your daddy's Rhodey. This is not Terrence Howard. Let's don't get that mixed up. This is a man. Dude, I love me. Dude, I appreciate Howard. I do, but I love me some Don Cheadle. I just think the stuff between him and Downey, I can't get enough of it. They could do a movie just themselves and just have
Yeah.
that banter back and forth. I think it'd be hilarious.
If you have not seen episode 2 of Secret Invasion yet and you're listening to this, go out of your way and watch it. I feel like him and Samuel Jackson have a monologue together, and it is the greatest bit of acting I have seen in any Marvel property. I kid you not. I cannot oversell this thing. Um, cannot say enough great things about Don Cheadle in this scene. He's great. He was great in this movie in the bits that we got him in. All of the bits with him at that party, and he's like trying to tell his his War Machine stories, and everybody else has these more impressive stories, and he's just kind of looking around like, yeah. And then he finally finds somebody that hits with, and you just see him like go like, yeah, War Machine.
Oh man, yeah, they're at that party in this movie, and he said every time I do that, it hits, man. Every time I tell that story, like, yeah, it's really good stuff. He's great, and also we see Anthony Mackie. We don't see him a lot in this movie either as Sam Wilson's slash Falcon. Boy, just on a side note, the cast list for that new Captain America film and the characters in it, dude, this movie's looking good. Like it's an all-star cast, man. I can't wait to see that Captain America film.
Hmm.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast, tackles one of the most popular and critically acclaimed series of our time, bringing together three hosts from two different parts of the world. Two Nations reviews all three seasons of Ted Lasso, 34 episodes total, with wrap-up episodes coming at the end of each season. Follow the show on social media at Two Nations Pod, and be sure to subscribe and download on all the major platforms. Just look us up, Two Nations Podcast. Kobe Smulders is back as Maria Hill. If you've been watching Secret Invasion, there's stuff happening. That's all I'll say. I love that she's been here from day one as well. A lot of day one characters here, man. It's really cool. Let's talk about, do they call them they call them the twins. Aaron Taylor Johnson as Pietro Maximoff, also known in the Marvel Universe as Quicksilver. And we've also got, of course, the great Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff. She's one of my favorite Avengers, dude. No kidding. So let me ask you this. Are you an Aaron Taylor Johnson guy? Are you an Evan Peters guy?
I liked Aaron in this role. I think that a lot of people prefer Evan Peters because he got some of the cooler things to do in the first X-Men movie that he showed up in. He of
Mhm.
course had that standout scene. And then he had another one in Apocalypse. But I really enjoy what they did with Aaron in this role. Aaron's a great actor. Really enjoyed him in Kick Ass and a bunch of other things I've seen him in. And I love the differences between the Quicksilvers. I love that this Quicksilver, his powers are a little bit more practical. They have limits. And I love stuff like him having to stop to catch a breath sometimes. I like his
Yeah, yeah.
I like his quirky little quips and stuff that he throws in, like, you didn't see that coming. Um, there's so many cool notes of him doing things that, like him trying to outrun the hammer while it's going to Thor, and figuring out halfway trying to chase it that he cannot lift it. Um,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, there's so many like understated things that he does with his powers in this movie that are cool. He's so cool in the first few scenes we see him in, and in the scene, and it's not in Wakanda, but in that factory with Claw, and he's like running around hitting everybody before they can even notice it. Yeah, he's great. I thought he was great in the final scenes, in the final third act action scenes. He was so good, and he just I wish we got more of him. That's all I can say. I wish we got more of him in this movie. I wish we got more of him in MCU as a whole. I think Josh's penchant to kill somebody to add weight to these things doesn't always need to happen. Now, I love that he's one of the few characters in the MCU where their death is actually stuck. But I would love to see him return someday, man, because I liked him in the role. And I thought that they set up an easy way to bring him back with the machine at the beginning of the movie, because she used it on Clint, and she said, "Hey, somebody with a higher metabolism would be able to heal from more stuff." And so when we get to the twist towards the end of the movie, I was like, "Oh, they could just put Quicksilver in that machine," and they didn't. I was like, why did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, why did and by the way, I know he was shot several times here. So I guess once you start piercing, important organs, you're a dead man. But like, had this just been flesh wounds, he would have been fine. Like he would have healed faster. I do like the way they handled the super speed, because we've seen the other Quicksilver, who's Evan Peters in the X-Men franchise. And now we've seen, of course, Aaron Taylor Johnson and Wanda, both who were never described as mutants. It was said that they were experimented on by German scientists. And Cap had that great line where he says, "What kind of a monster will let a German scientist experiment on them?" Which is great. And
Yeah,
Maria says, "We're not a war, Captain." And he says, "They are." That's a great line.
yeah. Um, Yeah, I like the setup for them that, they have reasonable gripes, not just with America, but with Tony. um, like
Oh, big
like
time.
yeah, if and I said this a while ago because there were people that were like, Wanda has always been a villain. She's always been the worst. Yeah, but I'm like, yeah, if I was if I was buried under rubble for days, and the only thing that I could see with this missile with Tony's name on it and waiting for days for it to kill me and it never happened, I would be like, screw this guy too.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story. And when they're telling that story, Ultron is tilting his head to the side like Kane, where he's actually it looks like he's listening and paying attention. Like it's almost like empathy to a certain degree, as if he's learning. It's a very odd, there's a lot of odd moments with Ultron where he's very off putting and it's unsettling the way he responds,
Yeah.
actually. That's just one that jumped in my head. But the super speed part, I had to backtrack on this a bit. We've seen the Flash of super speed. We've seen the other Quicksilver. We've even seen things. What's the animated film with the squirrel who goes so fast that everything's in slow? That's the first time I saw it. Everything's just frozen in time, right?
Hmm.
Like so, we've seen on the big screen super speed handled before, but the way they handle his speed, I'm with you. I like the fact that he has to stop, take a breath. When he slides into the frame of the scene, it's not a blur and a whiz. It's just he kind of slides in. It's a very slick and very sleek, like that. I appreciated that. I like the fact that they handled his speed here the way they did. It makes a lot of sense. So at least it's different. And by the way, speaking of super speed, we've seen, of course, on the Flash TV show multiple times. Speaking of Ultron, dude, I got to gush about James Spader, dude. He is effing great. Again, offsetting or off putting, very unsettling. What did you think about James Spader as Ultron here?
I think some of the criticism of this movie is that he wasn't serious. He was kind of jokey throughout the movie. He was
That's true.
quirky. And some of the changes to his origin, I think some people didn't like it. I thought that he had several scenes where um, he took on some of Tony's character traits, but he also could tell. He also looked at things in a more logical way than Tony because he's a robot. He's and so I thought there were great things that they did with that. I thought that they took some of the better um, character traits from Tony and added them to this villain character, and that made him interesting. Um, there's so
Mm.
many things that I like about Ultron in this movie. I say all the time, him coming awake and then taking one look at the internet and going, "Yeah, the human race has to go." And I was like, "He's right." I totally understood where he was coming from when he took one look at the internet and he was like, "Yeah, nah, these people have to go. They're the problem."
Yeah.
Uh, but there's so many other great things like him monologuing and talking at certain points, and people are just like moving around him, like, "Wait, what are you doing?" Like, I'm talking here, or uh, just some of his dialogue in these scenes are just great. Like him him dropping down on that truck where he's fighting Steve, and Steve throws a shield at him, and he just knocks it away and just goes, "Stop it."
Yeah. And when he cuts off Claw's arm, he's like, "Ah, well, now look, it's almost like he goes, "Now, did you see what you made me do? I didn't want to do that." Like that was awesome, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I get that some people didn't like this take on Ultron, but I enjoyed it. I I very much enjoyed him being very smart alecky throughout the movie. I enjoy his interactions with Vision a lot. Um, I Vision will always throw a line in somewhere that is just incredible. And he does it here. He does it in WandaVision. Um, and he has that line with Ultron, and Ultron is just like looking at him like, "Hi, pathetic to me. Like I hate you."
Yeah, because Vision doesn't see the human race as being germs. He doesn't see them as being pests, as Ultron does. Like, well, I'm just going to fix this. I'm going to blow it all up. And that's not Vision's
Yeah,
solution for anything.
well, in Wanda's words, Vision is a guy that sees a problem and thinks he can fix it. Where did he get that from?
Mm,
Tony Stark. He
well
looks at
said.
something and he's like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
this is the problem." And the difference is that Tony doesn't think the human race is a problem. Ultron looks at everything that's happening in the world and he goes like, "No, you guys are the problem. I have to get rid of you."
Yeah. Oh, That's well said. And Tony comes out in him because when they meet up as a team with Ultron for the first time in suit, like suited up, Thor says nobody has to break anything. Ultron says, clearly you've never made an omelet. And Tony says, oh, he beat me by 1 second. That was so good. Like,
Yes, I love that he
oh
he
man.
has a lot of Tony's quirks, but also sees things in a very black and white way. Um, and I think that makes for a good villain, man. I think
Yeah,
he
I
does the
agree.
monologue later in the movie to Tony, and I was just sitting there like, no, this is really good. Um, I mean, even because I don't think that he sees Wanda and Pietro as allies so much as means to an end at that point.
Hmm.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's how he goes throughout this entire movie. Like he just sees certain things as means to an end.
Yeah, there's always there's a scene with Claw when he says and this is how Claw knows that something's up because he says keep your friends rich and your enemies rich and wait to find out which is which. And he just looks at him like he says Stark and he goes, "What?" Tony Stark used to say that.
Don't you
And
dare compare me to
that's
Stark.
when he snaps. Yes, he says you're one of his. Oh, that did him in right there.
How dare you compare me to Stark?
Oh, that was a no no here for sure. I love James Spader here too. I just don't get it, man. Some people just don't want to like anything. I swear to God, it's okay to have an opinion. I've said multiple things about the DC universe here on this show that I would dare say a lot of people would vehemently disagree with me on, and that's fine. It's okay. I just and I try to be fair about it, but like looking at this fairly, I can understand. Okay, he was too lighthearted. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, how many serial killers depicted in films have been dead serious? I just want to kill, kill, kill. Most of the time, they're clever, they're charming, they're off-putting, it's unsettling with their demeanor. They're antisocial. They don't really know how to talk. They don't know when humor's working and when it's not, when they should and shouldn't use it. To me, that's Ultron in this movie.
Yeah, I look, I get that some people coming into this movie wanted like this very serious Ultron. I get coming off of the first movie, you were gonna have a tough act to follow with Loki and a main villain, and I get that some people were
Hmm.
let down by that, but I enjoyed Ultron.
I agree. Same here. Ulysses Claw, as we mentioned, who gets a lot to do later on in the MCU, is portrayed by Andy Serkis. Was this the first mention we had of Wakanda in MCU film?
Isn't it mentioned in Iron Man 2 briefly? It's not mentioned by name, but there's a reference to Wakanda in Iron Man 2, I believe.
I guess in reference to the I don't know what it be in reference to. I don't remember now.
If I remember correctly, when Tony and Nick Fury are having a conversation at one point about vibranium, it was mentioned in passing in that conversation, but it wasn't
Hmm.
mentioned by the country
Interesting.
wasn't mentioned by name. It was just a country that is rich in this element.
Right. Also, Paul Bettany, who we've not mentioned, as Vision, we see the debut of Vision. To this point, Paul Bettany has only ever been the voice of Jarvis. So we finally get the Vision realized here. What did you think about how he looks? I love the fact that when he sees Thor, he immediately grows a cape because I guess he looks at him and says, well, I need to look regal. I need to look like this guy, which is a nice little explanation of why he has a cape to begin with. But what did you think about the Vision in this movie?
I liked how accurate Vision looked. I liked that they didn't shy away from the original uh, green and red look.
Mm,
I really like how he looks in this movie. I think Paul Bettany was a perfect voice for him.
mm,
I like the revisions to his origin. I think they work with the MCU as as it stood of him being Jarvis and then having his origin tied to Ultron made sense. Um, there's a lot of things I like about the scene when we first see Vision when he comes out of that that case and he gets thrown into that window and he stops just short of breaking the glass. And he sees himself in a reflection for the first time. And like I said, he gives one of the best. best lines in the movie. And when he's explaining the faults of humanity to Ultron, and he's telling him, like, yeah, they're flawed, but that's what makes them great. And he's like, yeah, but they're doomed. And he was like, yeah, but of course they are. And he goes, but thing isn't special because it's meant to last.
Yeah, that's great.
It's such a great line, man.
It is a great line. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm glad that they kept, and I love that they played with his appearance with the Halloween costume and the WandaVision show, which was really nice touch.
Yeah. WandaVision is such a good show, man.
Yeah, I mean, that show should get a lot of praise too because there's, and you know what? You were talking about the voice and everything. I'm so glad that Paul Bettany, when this was pitched to him at some point, whatever that point was, Paul, we're eventually going to put you in a suit and you're actually going to work, act this out among the other Avengers on screen. I'm very glad Paul Bettany didn't go, "What are you kidding me? This comic book stuff's below me. I'll do your voice, but that's all you're getting out of this guy." Like, I love the fact that they kept continuity. It's the same Jarvis that you've heard for years, beginning with the first Iron Man film. I love that they kept it, man. I love that he did this.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I'm glad that they actually used Paul Bettany. And like I said, he's done some great acting from here on. I think that um, Age of Ultron was a great way to introduce some of these characters, be it Ultron or Wanda or Pietro. And I think the MCU did a great
Mm.
job of building on them from then on because I remember there was a lot of criticism of Wanda in particular when this movie first came out. And I thought Elizabeth Olsen did great with what she was given to do, but I felt like there was so much juggling going on in this movie that it wasn't going to give you everything that we want to see from these characters. And now we're almost 10 years later and people love Wanda. People are like so invested in Wanda. In the same way with Vision, people are invested enough with Vision that people were upset when he died.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Critical at first and now they're invested. That's excellent. Because it's absolutely true. Did you notice, of course, she has an accent in this movie and then we didn't hear it later?
Yeah, I think they did a good job of trying to kind of retcon some stuff away that did not work in the original iterations of the character. I think they fine tuned what worked with Vision and Wanda later on. Uh, the
Mm.
accent was always kind of strange. Her and Pietro's accents in this movie were odd. But I think their explanation of it made sense. Like the stuff in WandaVision where they explained that they learned English from watching the sitcoms, and that was her. That's why they liked American television so much. Um,
Mm.
and so like having her switch back and forth between accents and trying to do like this Americanized accent in WandaVision, and their explanation for it was really smart. Um, and of course, it gave Elizabeth Olsen a way to explain away and do some acting as well. Um, but yeah, I think that there's so many things like that from this movie that Marvel ended up being right about, or they ended up just after a little bit more time and a little bit more work with these things, got people to love them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. As we said when we kicked this thing off, man, I think this movie is much better than what some people perhaps remember it to be. We also have to mention Haley Atwell gets a flashback here as Peggy Carter, who's effing great. I love this. I just love
Yeah.
her so much. She's one of my favorites. Idris Elba as Hemdall. He's great. He's always great. He's one of those guys that could show up and read the phone book, and he should win an award for it. I'm serious. He's just great, man. Stellan Skarsgård as Eric Selvig is back. I love that guy as well. Uh, Sam Jackson, the great Sam Jackson. We haven't mentioned Nick Fury at all. Well, and very little here, but of course he's here. Were you surprised with Thomas Kretschmann as Wolfgang von Strucker that Baron von Strucker didn't get a bigger, like, in other words, he's not much of a heavy. They dispose of him fairly quickly. I mean, he makes his presence known, and I'm blanking on the other film where he also appears. I can't remember now for the life of me which one it is. What did you think about the fact they didn't really do a whole lot with him?
He is in the end credit scene, and that's the first time we see the twins. And that
Yeah,
is at the end of which movie? Is it at the end of Winter Soldier?
I think it might be. maybe. If you're going on continuity here, then you're looking at Avengers Age of Ultron is preceded by Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I doubt that's where we saw it.
Yeah.
Iron Man 3, Captain America Winter Soldier. Looks like Winter Soldier might have been the one.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. His first appearance, yep, it was in the mid-credit scenes of Captain America: Winter Soldier. It didn't bother me. Again, there was just so many characters they were trying to juggle in this movie. They were trying to introduce so many new ideas and new characters. It was a lot. To, it was a lot to keep up with in one movie, and so
It's true.
I didn't really have a problem with him being disposed of quickly. It almost felt like uh, when you read a comic and how the hero is already in the midst of stopping like a bank robbery or something, and they beat like this villain of the week to start off this arc, and then we never see that character again. It felt a lot like that. Like Shocker was one of those characters that he would be in a lot of Spider-Man comics like that. He'd be like robbing a bank, and then he gets thwarted, and we'd never see him again until like we
Right.
needed him for another like cold open for something.
That's true. Throwaway villain of the week.
Yeah.
Oh, we also have to say that Thanos gets a scene at the end, which is leading to things much more devastating later on.
Is it the first time Josh Brolin does the voice?
Well, we had the scene of him in the floating chair on that asteroid, whatever it is.
Oh, that's right in Guardians. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, but I like his face changed a couple of times before we saw him full body in Infinity War. So they tweaked his appearance a couple of times for sure. Tom Clark 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. Tom Hiddleston was supposed to come back for Loki and apparently film some things, but the scenes did not make the theatrical cut of the film. I can't imagine, unless it had been a dream sequence with Thor, how in the world do you fit Loki into this? And honestly, I don't know if you need Loki in part 2 here. I think it made sense that he wasn't here, honestly.
Yeah. I think it was fine that we didn't see him again until, at least in the Avengers movies, until Infinity War.
Yeah. Also, the country, the fictional country of Sokovia, right? This thing has, a lot of consequences down the road. Civil War basically is based on the end of this film, where things have really fallen apart and the teams ends up splitting up. So that country actually becomes a character in this movie. What did you think of the plot here, Phil? I mean, we call Ultron a villain, but he's not human. So he's not really operating out of revenge or I mean it feels that way, but he's not human. What did you think of this idea of the moment he becomes self-aware that he is born? Well, that's it. I got to wipe things out because it's the same thing we've seen in the Matrix and numerous other sci-fi things over the years where the moment AI is born, it's going to start killing and taking over. What did you think about the plot here?
I thought the plot was fine. I mean, is it a little bit cumbersome that Ultron's plan was to lift a country off of the planet and then throw it back down onto the planet to kill everybody? Yeah, a little bit. It's very comic book science. It's very comic book movie as it has to be big floating object with big MacGuffin that stops it from doing the thing that's going to destroy the entire planet. Um, I didn't. That stuff didn't bother me, but his as far as his plot to be like, all right, well, human race has to go, man. We got to completely start over. Um, that's a very Ultron scheme. That's straight out of the comics.
Oh, for sure. Looking back on it, wouldn't it have made more sense to bring some satellite? Well, I guess satellites coming down from space wouldn't have had that big of an impact. Not enough to cause worldwide catastrophe. All right, I can kind of see.
Yeah, it is. It's like I said, it's just a bit cumbersome that he's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna rip an entire country out of its place, and then I'm just gonna slam it back into the planet, and that's gonna kill everybody.
Man, this movie really does sow the seeds for a lot of things that happens afterward. Like, there's another reason why I don't think this movie gets enough props is that this film really does have to happen, and things have to happen in the order they happen in for other things to happen later. Like this
Yes.
movie sets up a lot of stuff after the fact.
Yeah. This does a lot of world building. It does a lot of setting up, not just the plot for the next two Avengers movies, but it sets up some of the plot for the next Captain America movie. It sets up some of the issues in the next Iron Man movie. There's a lot that comes from this movie that splintered off into other things, and that's why I always felt like this movie ages a lot better than people think that it does. Like, man, when you just look at like how it splintered off in some of the TV shows in recent years, not just WandaVision, took its cues from Age of Ultron. There's so many things that come from this movie.
It's true. It's true. Well, I was going to say, does Falcon and Winter Soldier come from? Well, I guess Falcon and Winter Soldier comes more from Civil War than it does Age of Ultron, perhaps.
Yeah, there are bits like the Sokovian Accord stuff that like the Zemo
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, yeah.
like the Zemo's entire motive against the Avengers and his entire um, plot point for certain parts of Civil War and in not Captain America, but Falcon and Winter Soldier comes from this movie because it's all the Sokovian
Mhm.
stuff. Um, there, like I said, there's WandaVision. There's stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Hawkeye that also comes from this movie.
Very true. Very true. That's yeah, wow, gosh, there's so much happening here for sure. As we said, and here's something else to think about, Phil, is that there's so many characters in this film that have their own films and then have their, like you said, their own series later. I mean, imagine being the guy that has to juggle the continuity here and keep it straight. And that guy's Kevin Feige. He's the one that makes sure everybody stays in their lane and understands, well, you can't do this because 3 movies ago we did this. Like, can you imagine the work it takes behind the scenes to make all this click, man?
Yeah, it's got to be insane. Like I'm sure there are like binders and binders and and Venn diagrams and flowcharts and all kinds of stuff. Like just fills up an entire room. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that I feel like is very, very underrated. I mean, like we talked about the opening scene of this movie and the action scene, but uh, when we first see Wanda and big props to Elizabeth Olsen. I cannot say enough great things about how good she is in this movie and how good she ends up being for the remainder of the MCU from then on. Um, but when she hexes everybody and we get all of those like dream sequences with all the characters, all of that stuff is
Oh
creepy.
man.
But just the way that it plays out with Iron Man, and he has like this big like paranoid bit that plays straight in Iron Man 3. Again, I don't know if people picked up on this, but all of his paranoia and all the stuff from him having the panic attack from Iron Man 3, and she hexes him, and he just has this moment of like, I can fix this. I can fix this on my own. I can't let this happen. I can't let everybody die. I can't let it be on my watch. And it's such a great scene of him just like staring off into the distance. And then she just has this smirk as he walks off. It's so good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great because yeah, they warn Cap, right? She warns Cap, that he's going to do, basically he's going to do something. And again, I think this further plants seeds of doubt between Cap and Tony. Like by the end of this, they're good. There's moments where they're good, they're fine, and those moments are great. Those moments make me happy because I'm a nerd about this stuff.
Yeah.
But like, and they'll be fine later, but they're not so fine. Uh, at the beginning of Civil War, like it really goes south really quickly. Like, Oh man.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that they're never like they're never all the way fine. I think that there's always this
mm,
uneasy trust between both of them. And I think that they both know why they both need to be there. Like why they both need to be a part of this team and why both of them are necessary. Why both of their viewpoints are necessary in the room. Um, but I don't think there's always kind of this uneasy agreement because they just agree to disagree on a lot of things. And I think it's kind of like that at the end of the movie where, yeah, he, uh, Steve picks up where he left off and he's like, I can lead this team. This is familiar to me. And Tony does what he does best. He goes off to tinker. Um, but I don't think that they ever totally agree on like what is the best cause of action. Like, should we be proactive or should we be reactive? And I think that's the thing with Steve. Steve is just like, let's deal with things when it happens. And Tony's like, no, we have to prepare for these things.
yeah, because Tony, if nothing else, he's a realist, right? He understands there's consequences, and you have to, like you said, you have to be prepared. And like Cap's thing is more of a, I don't want to call him a dreamer, but he's more like, oh, rah rah team, we'll work together and figure this out. I mean, I kind of see the merit of both arguments, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it. I think that's what makes it so compelling is that both of them in some ways are not wrong, but also though both of them can be very bullheaded as well, especially Tony. um, but no, I think by the end of the movie they've just kind of figured out like, well, it's kind of an awkward thing to leave this movie on. Steve just kind of walks away like, well, you created this robot that wanted to commit genocide, but hey, see you later.
Oh well.
Yeah, it works out. uh, yeah, no, it is. I do think it's just this uneasiness, and I think a lot of it is because you're watching all of these characters deal with their trauma in real time, and I don't think we see Tony really deal with a lot of his trauma into the very last Avengers movie, and so
Mm.
he's got this ongoing thread throughout his movies and the Avengers movies of him not dealing with the fact that not just that he's human and he can make mistakes, but there's some things that he just cannot fix. And I think he's got this idea, and this is a man. If you want to dig very deep, this is a very kid that grew up at some point without his parents, um, or kid that grew up in a divorce. When you think that certain things are your fault, you find a way to try and fix things that are either not broken or cannot be fixed.
Mm.
Because you always overthink things like, what if I did this, or what if I was there, or what if I did this? Maybe if I was here to do this, then it wouldn't have broken. And sometimes some things just are meant to happen the way they're supposed to happen.
It's like you're trying to find a way to find order in your life.
Yes, and I think that that's Tony because Tony is a guy that is not just a futurist and a pragmatic guy, but he's also a guy that does not believe in gods. He does not believe in magic. He does not believe in uh, fate. He believes in science. He
Mm.
believes that I can. I am a man of science, and as a man of science, I've been put here to create solutions.
Mm.
And there's always a solution, but sometimes there isn't.
Yeah. God, I just oh, the way you said that for some reason into my head, Steven from Nacho Libre when he said I just believe in science. God, why it just popped into my head. Oh.
Yeah, man, I just think there's so many things in this movie that sets up who Tony is for the rest of the MCU, and it
Mm.
sets up who a lot of the other Avengers are as well. And I know there are some people that hate that Tony has to be the focal point of everything, but I think with the way that they created the MCU, it made sense. Um, I mean, you can get into the economical parts about it of how Robert Downey Jr. is probably the highest paid actor, and because of that, of course, he's going to be at the forefront of all the movies. He's also the biggest star of the franchise, so of course he's going to be in the forefront. It's a Hugh Jackman problem all over again. Um, but I think they did a good job of making these things make sense.
I mean, it doesn't work without him. It doesn't work without him. And as evidenced by that is
Yeah.
that since he's no longer with us, we still have fans and even casual moviegoers debating whether or not he should be recast and how in the world does Marvel move forward from here? And how in the world do we ever get another Avengers movie? That's the impact this guy had on this entire franchise.
Yeah, but I also think the brilliant thing about what they've done uh, with the Infinity Saga is that um, they've built the ideology of the Avengers team around Tony and Steve. So, what are the Avengers without Tony and Steve? And that's kind of why they haven't come back yet. Because what is this team without these two men?
Mm,
Who's going to lead them? Who creates the ideals and the fundamental core principles that this team is built on without the two of them? And I think that again, to get back to what we said at the
oh,
beginning of the movie of how great the theme song is, like, man, the second we finally see the Avengers on film again, and we do get this theme song whenever we do, it's gonna be a big moment. But you got to build to that moment.
yeah, you got to earn it.
Yeah, and I think they've done that several times in the franchise, whether it be in the first movie, the homage towards the montage rather of them suiting up felt earned, and I feel like the same way throughout this movie, there are moments that felt earned, um, and you just have to get there. You got to tell the story first.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, but man, such a great movie, such an underrated movie, man. Um, love this movie.
It is underrated. God, man, why? Yeah, as I said before, some people just want to crap on everything. It's entirely underrated. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, there's so many good things here. Like one of my favorite things in this movie is when Pietro dies and Pietro getting shot is such a good moment because, like I said, they played up this red herring the entire movie of making us think that Hawkeye is going to die. And so when it's Clint, the guy that they just introduced, and he looks straight at the camera and goes, "You didn't see that coming?" Such a good moment. And then we have
Oh,
the this
yeah.
beautiful moment of everything else slowing down, and it has like the music going over it, and you cut to that scene of Wanda destroying every robot in that room as she's like restrucking and like uh it's just such a good sequence of events how everything plays into one another, and then she like snatches Ultron's heart out of his chest, like so good.
Yeah, dude, again, we talk about how incredibly strong she is. It didn't take much effort to take this guy out.
Yeah, yeah, you get the all of this stuff of the island is falling. Well, no, I'm sorry, it happens after she reaches in. So she gives the line of "You took everything from me. You know what that feels like." And then she snatches the core
Mm,
out of his chest, and then that one Ultron drone pushes the button like right afterwards because um, it's almost like this whole thing of this whole sequence of Pietro dying creates this domino effect of her leaving her post to get revenge, and that's been kind of a again this string that's been going with Wanda for the entirety of her character arc is that she'll have this one moment where she slips up because she'll choose revenge over everything else. And that almost
right,
cost them
right.
everything because the drone comes in and hits the button, and it's like then all of the slowed down music gets sped up. It's like it's such a beautiful sequence of events, man. It's so cool.
And it's something similar in was it Infinity War, right? When Thanos is killing Vision, like she, again, like these moments, it's a great point where she just she lets her emotions get the best of her. Star Lord does the same thing. Like I love the fact, Phil, that as much as we get a nice little bow on some of these stories, a lot of times these characters just screw it up because they're so freaking human. Like
Yes. And
we said that about Marvel for years.
she has had several moments where she could have had she let her emotions get the best of her, and I think that that is what makes her such a good character. You're right. In Infinity
Mm.
War, when she could have just destroyed Vision before Ultron got there, and she waited so long, and then by the time she finally did it, Ultron just reverses time and just takes the Mind Stone anyway, and then kills him again in front of her. Craziness.
Yeah, she watched him die twice. Dude. I
Yeah,
wonder dude, if you had to predict, how are we going to get the Vision back at some point, do you think?
we still have White Vision running around from
That's what
WandaVision.
I mean. Yeah. How are we going to get him back?
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where we go with that character. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, this I love that sequence. There's just something so beautiful about this sequence about like how everything slows down and just the metaphor of everything slowing down when a speedster dies. So beautiful, man.
Yeah. Some other scenes to point out. I love when we see Veronica. I love that Tony gives everything a weird name. Like he gives the Hulkbuster armor the name Veronica. And he's got, and I mean, Bruce helped him design it, for goodness sake.
Yes.
Supposedly.
Yeah. It's Tony being a guy that is a mechanic at heart and naming everything after a woman like a car.
There you go. Good call. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no. The Hulkbuster fight in where is it? Is it in? It's in that African country.
I think so. Yeah. It's not Sokovia.
No, but I keep wanting to say Lagos, but it's not Lagos. Lagos is the country in Civil War.
Right.
Um, I don't remember, but that whole fight sequence is great. um, just just great things like him punching Hulk in the face and he knocks out a tooth and he's just like, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Oh my God. Yeah. He spits a tooth out. And before that, he got him down and was punching him with that, like that piston fist. And he
Yes,
says, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Oh my God.
so great. So great.
And we've talked a lot about Wanda, but her abilities are really coming to play here, where she gets in all the characters' heads and gives them visions and whatnot. Man, we see later what a kind of a villain she becomes in Multiverse of Madness. My goodness,
Yeah.
I mean, we see everything up close and personal. Man, alive,
Um,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, again, this movie, you can see all of the changes. Like there are bits of this movie where Wanda does not have a suit. It's just like this like small dress that she has under a jacket.
Yeah,
And you could see later on where Elizabeth Olsen was like, "Yeah, I would like to kind of be covered up," and they actually grant her that. But again, I feel like they made more and more incremental changes with Wanda from Age of Ultron on that made her better and better. Um, but I love things like her trying to recover from Hawkeye hitting her with the shock dart, and uh, uh, two things that happened after this. Quicksilver running away with her, and Hawkeye is just like, "Yeah, you better run. You better run."
yeah.
They get away, and Wanda gives the line like, "I'm okay. I want the big one," and that leads into Hulk smashing into that city.
And the scene where he's got Pietro in his sights from a distance, he's like, "I got a shot. Nobody would know. I can just do it right now." Like, because he's so irritated with him. It's so funny.
Yeah, and he's walking away, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what happened to him, man. Robot shot
Yeah. Yeah.
him."
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
man.
but man, just so many great things like how they had this relationship the entire movie, and he ended up saving his life, man.
It's true. Yeah. That little back and forth they had through the whole film. Yeah. I think that's what makes a lot of these MCU films work, is the little connective tissue they will create between characters, where the same joke will happen 20 minutes after it happened the first time and it still lands, it still works.
Yeah. Yeah, Quicksilver also. Quicksilver has some great moments in this movie when he's running around and trying to get the people to evacuate, and he walks in that police station. He's like, "Yeah, everybody out," and nobody listens to him. And then he runs away and comes back with the guns, and he shoot him in there. Get out of here! Come on, get out.
Yeah, he gets shot in that scene after they tell him to hold your fire, and he just looks at that guy, looks at the soldier.
Yeah,
Quicksilver does. That's good stuff. So, again, we talked about the Infinity thing that's going to happen later. I mean, dude, Vision's walking around with the Mind Stone in his head, and this guy by himself, just with that stone, is one of the most powerful beings on the planet because of it. I mean, I don't know how much, if we ever really dive into how much that's a fact in this universe, but my goodness, like
yeah,
he's walking around with an Infinity Stone, kind of like Doctor Strange is, for goodness sake.
yeah, yeah. How about we get that great scene of him fighting 1-on-1 with Ultron, and then he gets him outside of the Citadel, and then him, Iron Man, and Thor like just start like ripping his armor off with the beams from afar, and then Hulk just like comes in and one shots him.
Hulk's great because he's just, I'll fix this. Just leave me the cleanup. I'll just smash. There's something to be said for raw, unadulterated rage and fury from the Hulk, man.
Yeah,
Uh, but we see the impact he has. Again, dude, I keep going back to this formula Marvel's used for 60 years in the books. This idea and longer, this idea of these characters are flawed. None of these people are perfect at all. Like Bruce Banner is a tragic figure. Like he's not a hero. Hulk is not a hero. They call him that, but like, look what he has to do to do his thing. Like Hawkeye systematically takes down enemies, and you'd never know he's there because
yes,
he's style and finesse, and he's a trained assassin. Widow's the same way. Hulk just F stuff up, man. He
yeah.
just throws things like
Yeah, but I mean, see, I think that's why I think if some of the romance stuff with him and Natasha was more understated, it would have been better
Mm,
because it
mm.
always made sense that she empathized with him because they see him the same way that everyone saw Wanda before she joined this team. He's just a weapon. He's just something to throw in there when they need him. And she empathized with that.
Oh
She
yeah, for
saw that
sure.
and
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, this guy's a human though."
Yeah, and I love the bits of she's the only one, like they've worked out this arrangement where she can bring him back. It's almost like hypnosis where she tells him the sun's getting real low and he immediately starts snapping out of it and coming back to himself.
His sun's getting real low. When, when Thor tries to do that in Ragnarok, it's
Yeah.
funny every time.
And last time we see Hulk here, he's taken off in the ship, and that leads to Thor Ragnarok.
Yes. Yeah, we of course get the scene here where he's in the Quinjet and Natasha's like, all right, just turn the ship around and he cuts it off. Cuts off the
Yeah,
communicator.
yeah, for sure. Again, man, a lot of seeds being planted here for stuff that happens after the fact. I really, really love that actually.
Yeah, I mean, we get the first signs of the team splitting in this movie because
Mhm.
Hulk goes off on his own and uh Tony is kind of not off the team, but he's basically doing his own thing. Yeah, we get the first kind of cracks in the team, like the first real cracks in this team in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. Let's see. Something else that we have to mention. The bit at the party where they're all trying to pick up the hammer is effing great. And Steve makes the thing like he nudges it. And Thor has that look. Oh, it's so great, man.
I love that I kept my headcanon theory from this movie and it paid off in Endgame because I said then I was like he can lift the hammer and my friend was like no I was like Steve is the kind of guy that would be able to lift that hammer but he's being a gentleman enough that he can see everybody else can't lift it so he's acting like he can't either but he could always lift it
Ah,
and I knew it then. And so
interesting.
when he lifted it in Endgame, I was like, I knew it. And then when Thor says he knew it too, I was like, yes, I knew it. I knew he could lift that hammer.
Have you, I know we've talked about this, pretty sure we have. Have you seen, it's been online for years, where someone took a camera into Endgame and the scene where the hammer gets lifted and you could hear the audience cheering when it hits Thanos straight in the face and Cap's the one that threw it. Oh my god, it's so good, dude.
It's so good. Such a good payoff of that because, like I said, I think that Steve always knew he was worthy, but I think he did not feel a need to brag. He was just like, ah, well, I probably can lift it, but I don't need to.
And there's a payoff that here too because Vision picks it up as if it's a stapler or a paperweight and just hands it to Thor. And they're all like, that shot with the camera is effing great because they're like, oh my God, like he just picked it right up. It's so awesome.
Yeah, you can also pick up the subtext in this movie that um, a big part of Tony and Steve's relationship is Steve letting Tony have certain moments to spare his ego. And it meant more to lift that hammer to Tony because he was the one that started it all, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, of course, being like, "Oh, well, I can lift it," but of course, I don't want to be because he knew that that would always be a sticking point between him and Tony, and so he let him have it. It's just like when he came back to Earth and he yelled at him, and he was like, "You weren't there," and he never argued back with him. He just stood there and took it because he was like, "I know you need to have this moment, so I'm going to let you have it."
That right there, if you really want to boil it down, that's kind of ego as well on Steve's part. Like no one else may see it that way, but it's like,
It kind of
you know what I
is.
mean? Like he's
It kind of is, but it also is kind of it's the what is the Lao Tzu quote? Somebody that knows doesn't always need to tell everybody they know. And I think he is in that moment is humble enough to know, like, I know I can lift this hammer, but I don't need to lord
mm,
this over the rest of the guys. Or
right.
I know that Tony is hurting in this moment and he needs to just vent at me. So I'm not gonna argue with him.
Yeah, because Tony and Rhodey both had their armor gloves on, trying to lift it at the same time. They're both arguing with each other.
Yeah.
Are you even trying?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I love the idea that Steve is the one that can lift it, and he knows he can lift it, but he doesn't need to show off. He doesn't. That's not who he is.
And plus, we got to say when Bruce goes to try to lift it, and then he comes off it, and he goes like he's gonna Hulk out. I mean, we established in the first Avengers movie Hulk can't lift that hammer because he tried.
Yes.
Remember, his feet were digging into the floor. You know.
Yeah. But again, if you want to put the Tony thing in the holy trinity of the team, and the back and forth between Tommy and Thor, where Thor they keep trying to one up each other and they keep having this dick measuring contest with each other. It's either of trying to lift the hammer of, hey, my girl's better than your girl. And Steve never
Mm.
plays into that stuff because that's not who he is. He's looking around like, yeah, I can lift the hammer. Like, yeah, I had a girl. There's only one girl that I think about, but I don't have to talk about her all the time.
And plus, I'm telling you, I'm sure there's plenty of wealthy people out there who are basically good people who don't look down their nose at everybody, who don't take life for granted. For me to sit here and say that all rich people are evil is kind of freaking ridiculous. For me to sit here and say all poor people are good people is also ridiculous. You can't paint people with a brush. However, in this instance, Steve grew up with nothing, very humble. He's still not a millionaire. Tony's had everything he's always wanted, which has jaded his perspective of the world. It has. Like,
Yeah.
I think he came around in the end, but it took a long time for him to see. Look how many years he was an arms dealer and thought it was okay. He was just in the family business and he was making a buck until he was shown this: you're killing people. It's your fault. It's the blood's on your hands. And like I do believe that colors both men's perspectives of the world.
I mean, you could either jump even further into this. It wasn't just exactly that he was shown that he was killing people. He almost died. And so he had to
Ah,
go
that's
through this
fair. Yeah,
experience where
okay.
he almost himself died. And then he looked around and the people that um, were ready to kill him and use him were using his weapons. He was like, yeah, enough is enough. Um, But yeah, I just think it goes into who Tony is as a person. Because again, he doesn't believe in gods and fantasies and magic. So he's like, no, this doesn't make sense. I should be able to lift this thing. And even if it is that he who is worthy, why am I not worthy? He's sitting there
Yeah.
like Isaiah Thomas. I fit all the criteria. I should be worthy.
Oh man, I will say, since we're nearing the end here, the third act of this film when Sokovia is getting torn to shreds. I mean, I think we take the visual effects for granted sometimes in these movies. We have to acknowledge that the work done to make you believe this city is not only up in the air, or this country, whatever, but that it is absolutely falling apart and all the wreckage, dude. There is some great work being done visually here in this film, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never get enough of like big action scenes where the Avengers are working together to like beat up faceless henchmen and save people. It just always works.
Yeah, it does.
I think there's so many great things like us seeing a helicarrier for the first time,
Hmm.
again, and just getting that call back of the helicarrier rising up and them using them to save the people. We get the Quicksilver line of this is what Shield is. I like Shield.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's good stuff. So much good stuff here, man. Again, I don't think people give this movie no credit. It's a really excellent film. Hey, hey, Tom Clark here for Tom Clark's Main Event. And if you are not subscribed, you're doing life wrong. Going strong since 2014 with over 300 episodes and a variety of guests that include Randy Orton, The Big Show, Rob Van Dam, and a lot more. Check us out on all the major platforms, including YouTube at Boink Studios. Subscribe today, Tom Clark's Main Event. And also, can I be honest? I may be a little nostalgic watching this back again because like I miss these movies. I don't care what anybody says. I was talking to somebody the other day, said they had Marvel fatigue, that they just couldn't take anymore. I'm like, you know what? I respect where you're coming from, but I will never be that guy. Never. Like, as much as She-Hulk is getting bashed and has been bashed, and the way Daredevil was handled. I mean, the stuntman that worked on the original Daredevil series is coming out in public and has made negative comments saying they've ruined the character. Look, I'm not going to sit here and argue and say anybody's wrong. Do I need to see Daredevil in the yellow and red in broad daylight doing the walk of shame? I never needed to see that. Okay. However, it's not going to make me turn off my TV. I'm in the bag for this stuff, man. Like, I may not love every single decision that's made, but I'm not the only one they're going to make. They're trying to make happy here. So, like, I'm trying to keep that in mind. But, dude, I'm nostalgic for this run of the Infinity story, man. This whole thing. I mean, like, I need to pick an evening or pick a day and just replay the entire set of movies at some point. Everything that leads up to Endgame.
Yeah,
I miss these movies. It really does make me wonder, Phil, what the future looks like. What's the next 15 years look like for the MCU? I really I think about that a lot, actually.
I agree, man. I look. I mean, if people, for their tastes, are ready to watch something else or they're not enjoying this stuff anymore, um, that's understandable. But as somebody that was always a big comic book fan, I'm never gonna get tired of this stuff.
No,
And so it
yeah,
never felt like a fad to me. It never felt like this bandwagon thing where everybody else is watching this cool thing. So I jumped in like, no, I've always been interested in this. I'm not gonna stop being interested.
same. Yeah, I'm never not going to be interested. I'm always going to be a fanboy. I may not collect full time anymore, but I spent my money on comic books. I did it again a few weeks ago, and I'm going to do it again in the future. And yeah, again, if we're having we're having conversations about how Daredevil looked in a She-Hulk TV series.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that we're upset about. And I'm like, it'll never escape me how fortunate we are to have what we have. I'm sorry, but I'm more humble when it comes to my view of this stuff. I don't look at it like, well, by God, it better be perfect. I'm just happy we're getting something. I'm sorry. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're very spoiled. And I enjoyed She-Hulk a lot. I don't, I, I think
Mm.
a lot of people try to take these things too seriously, and She-Hulk is a character
Yeah.
that doesn't take herself very seriously. She is one of those characters that breaks the fourth wall and stuff. So it made sense for her. her show to have the tone that it did. And I liked
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil in it. I didn't have a problem with it. I'm glad we're getting more Daredevil stuff. So I don't know, man. I think people have to calm down.
I mean, let's just remind kids out there, none of this is real. It bears repeating. None of this is real. This
Yeah.
show's real, however, and we're crushing it. We got another Avengers movie. The last Avengers movie to this point that was not covered has now been covered. And as we said before, if you listen to these things in order, this is going to sound really weird, but it's okay. I didn't want to retrofit it and act like that we didn't cover the other movies. So there you go. Phil, let's try to take this home, my friend. What is your last word on Avengers Age of Ultron?
I think Age of Ultron is a very underrated movie in my opinion. I think it's one of those movies that has aged much better. There are of course some of the stuff in it that, if depending on how you feel about Joss Whedonisms, might not be your cup of tea.
Mm.
Um, but there are so many good things about this movie. There's so many things from this movie that ended up developing into even better aspects of the MCU. Um, I don't know. I just think it gets more hate than it deserves.
Follow up question: is Ultron dead?
I've never believed that he's dead. I always felt like they didn't show the body because um, not Ultron, Vision is not a character that would think it was logical to kill Ultron. He just would trap him in a mind stone.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I love James Spader, so I'm okay with that. Anybody that doesn't like James Spader, come on, man.
That's a inconsistency in the character. If the character is telling Ultron in this monologue, no, you don't kill things. You let them
Yeah.
learn from their mistakes. So you think that he would finish that monologue by killing Ultron?
Well, now to be fair, there is that scene earlier in the film when he stands there and they're questioning whether or not they can trust him if he's Ultron as well. And he flat out says that Ultron has to die. Like he said I don't want to kill Ultron, but he said Ultron has to die. So maybe that was the duality of that, was that he had no desire to kill, but that he saw that it had to be done for the betterment of the planet. I don't know. You could be right. Maybe he's trapped after all.
I never believed that he killed him. My fan theory was always that he trapped him in the Mind Stone, and when
Mm.
Wanda destroyed the Mind Stone, she freed him, and nobody knows it.
Oh, interesting. Well, we'll see what'll happen in the future, kids. Everybody try to keep yourselves in shape and stay healthy as long as you can, because I need to get as many of these movies in, before I kick it and leave this planet. So Marvel will give you a reason to stick around, dude.
I thought you were going the route of everybody stay in shape and don't rely on AI, because we've seen from this movie that AI will be the death of us all.
AI is going to listen. I've said for years, AI is going to rise up and conquer us. Every single movie, including The Matrix, is my shining example of the moment that a computer becomes sentient. Its first driving motivation is I have to survive and I will do it by any means necessary, which means all of us have to go because we're in the way. It's coming, Phil. The robot apocalypse is coming. The robo apocalypse, something like that. It's coming. Robot overlord's going to take it over. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
We keep messing around. We're asking for it, dude. We're asking for it. I don't know.
telling you, I'm gonna be somewhere like Kent Brockman. Like, I, for one, accept our new robotic overlords.
Oh man. Well, I keep going back to that line from SpongeBob, the Krusty Krab training video, when he says that Krabs doesn't have like cash registers like computers or whatever, because he said his fear of robot overlords helps keeps the balance of power in check or something. I have a fear of robot overlords. It's very real. Well, this one goes out to all the really, really smart people in the room. You're going to kill us all. And this will be on record for generations to come that I warned you. We warned you here on the show, and none of you listened.
Yeah.
Shame on you for not listening.
Shame on you for trying to give them the man is not meant to meddle speech.
Right. How dare you? There you go, kids. Go back and watch this movie. As Phil said, it does completely hold up. Can't wait to see what happens next. In the meantime, that, my friends, true believers, is Avengers Age of Ultron. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.